I found several free and inexpensive things to do in Dublin. Exploring Dublin and staying on a shoestring budget is very doable. I'll tell you the four things I did in the short time I was first there, and then I have three travel tips for you before you go. The first free thing I did in Dublin was walk around. I just got out my map apps and one of those cute little maps of the city that they have at the front desk, and I explored. It's a great way to get your bearings and see famous neighborhoods like Temple Bar and landmarks like Halfpenny Bridge and interesting public art. There are free walking tours in every city I went to in Europe, and every one of them that I took was terrific. Unfortunately, I missed the one in Dublin because at their meetup time, I was already out exploring. Plus, I don't think I realized at the beginning just how helpful and informative the walking tours are. But I will definitely take one the next time I'm there. Remember that even though the tour is free, you should tip the guide. Another thing I did that had no entrance cost was go to a pub and listen to traditional Irish music. I went to the Celt, which is a pub close to the hostel I was at and was recommended by the person at the front desk. It was great. It was dinner time for me, so I sat at the bar and had dinner, and I decided to try a glass of whiskey because I'd never had it, and it turns out I like it, and I do like it neat. So the people were very friendly at the Celt, both the bartender and the other patrons. We had good crack, as they say, while listening to the music, and I met several interesting locals and Irish people from further afield, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Definitely a night to remember. So if you're enjoying these tips so far, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps my channel a lot. An inexpensive thing I did was go to the Epic Irish Immigration Museum. It only costs about $22 to $25 depending on whether you get the senior or the student discount. And I learned so much about Irish history at that museum. I became more educated on where the Irish people moved to all over the world, including to America. I highly recommend this museum. You do need to book online and pick a time slot, but there should be something available to fit your schedule. It was not too crowded. Another inexpensive thing I did for what I got was a day trip to the Cliffs of Moher, up the wild Atlantic Way and into Galway. I had a really wonderful time on this trip. The tour group I went with was Viator because it was such a good price for a full day tour. I paid about $86 at the end of May 2025. I decided to splurge on this tour. Well, I've been saving money other places, but I love nature and I wanted to see the topography. I've never seen the west coast of Ireland, and getting a chance to see it was just too good to pass up. I tend to not join a lot of tours because they tend to be expensive. However, when I did the math on this one, it would have been a little more expensive and probably have taken more time for me to take a train out there and then figure out what bus to take to the cliffs and then take a bus back to the train and then back, or rent a car and buy gas. So I would have to figure all that out in a place I had never been to. So this day trip just streamlined everything. And another thing it offers that you don't get on the train is history. The tour guide gives you a history of everything on the way out there and a little bit on the way back. It was just an amazing trip with incredibly beautiful countryside. I really enjoyed the Cliffs of Moher too. And when we first got there, it was really foggy. It was beautiful to look at the fog surrounding those hobbit type stores built into the cliffs, but we couldn't see the cliffs. So I went up to Orion's Castle. If it's right there. If you don't know, castles are all over the place in Europe. Definitely different from anything I'm used to here in America. So as I was exploring the castle, I ran into my seatmate on the plane that I'd taken out to Dublin. And by the time we finished exploring the castle, the fog lifted and we had gorgeous views of the cliffs. My seatmate took a picture of me, and not only could we see the cliffs here, but we could see further out into the Atlantic, all the way to the Aran Islands. We got back in the bus and we drove through the Burin National Park, and it was incredible landscape, barren and harsh but beautiful. Then we arrived in Galway, which is a lovely harbor town on the west coast. We had been in the bus for several hours by this point, and one thing I have to contend with when I travel is motion sickness. I had put a prescription motion sickness patch on well before we left that morning, but I got sick anyway. When I got out in Galway, I threw up. That was it. So I really didn't get to see much of the town. I made my way to the Ayr Square, which is a little park in the middle of town, and sat there and rested and people watched. And I really liked the feel of Galway, and I decided I have to come back there. And so I did at the end of my 7 weeks in Europe. Meanwhile, I took my usual medication, waited for the time to pass before we boarded the bus again. You know, I was really surprised to see a Krispy Kreme in Galway. I think they started in North Carolina, so it was like a little touch of home. So here are my tips for if you're planning a big trip. Tip 1, get rest when you get there. Don't plan anything on your first day. Just get in, find your hotel, settle in, get something to eat, get familiar with the area. You can take a nap if you want to, or go to bed early. Not planning anything concrete for the first day means you don't have to cancel anything if you're delayed for any reason. And you can rest from the travel. Tip number 2, do what you want to do. What I mean is that this trip is for you. You don't have to do something else just because an influencer on Instagram or YouTube says you have to do this. Plus, it'll probably be crowded. So think about what you are truly interested in and just do that. For instance, a lot of people told me you have to go to the Guinness Storehouse in Dublin. If you like Guinness or beer or breweries, go ahead. I know that I don't like those things and I'm not interested, and my time is precious. So I didn't go. I'm not going to places to validate my experience in someone else's eyes or do the must-dos. Now, if I was with someone who really wanted to go, I would go for their enjoyment, but I didn't want to go, so I didn't go. Simple as that. Tip number 3, whatever you decide to do, book ahead. Dublin and Ireland are super popular places to go, so making reservations is necessary. That day trip I took to the Cliffs of Moher was really popular, and I might have missed out if I hadn't booked ahead. Dublin was a bookend for me on this 7-week trip to Europe. In other words, I flew in there and I flew out of there. So when I returned at the end of the trip, I did several more sightseeing things on a budget, which I will tell you about in a future video. Also, there is a website, visitdublin.com, where you can find many more free things to do in Dublin. The thing that stood out to me on both of my trips to Ireland was how really warm, friendly, and reasonable the people are. Everyone I met there was kind and compassionate, even while being overrun with tourists. I really do hope I get to go back soon. If you liked this video, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you don't miss my next video on free and cheap things to do in Scotland. And if you have a tip to share that helps you when you travel, please put that in the comments below. Thank you so much for your time.